Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey everybody, it's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. This is the only podcast where I've covered every episode of the Sunbow cartoon, DIC, even G.I. Joe Extreme, and every issue of the Marvel Real American Hero comic book, page by page, panel by panel. This week is another episode of You on Joe. That's right, you, the G.I. Joe fan, the listener who loves America's favorite fighting team. You are the star of this show. What is your specific favorite part of G.I. Joe? Some dig the cartoons, some love the comics, you all love the action figures. Whatever it is about G.I. Joe that you absolutely adore, I want to talk to you. So please, if you want to participate, please be a guest. Reach out to me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, at Joe on Joe Pod. Or you can send an email to joeonjoepod@gmail.com and let me know what topic you'd like to cover. The more specific, the better, and we'll get you on the show. While you're online, please give me a rate and review on your podcast app. Every review helps grow this show. Or if you're inclined, you can visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod and help keep the show afloat. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. And while you're at it and you're online, you can give a listen and a shout out to our great sponsors, the Movies and a Meal podcast. In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies and a Meal podcast. The Movies and a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews, they do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies and a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies and a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too. Now, I'm so excited for you guys to meet today's guest. It is the mind noodler himself, Mr. Matt Donnelly. Matt is the co-host of one of my absolute favorite podcasts, Penn's Sunday School, and he has been the head writer for Penn and Teller Fool Us for 9 seasons. He's also a very talented performer himself, a comedian in his role as the Mind Noodler. With a mix of comedy and magic, he is about to embark on the Foolers Live Tour, which brings together some of the best magic performers of our time. They're all winners from Fool Us, and they showcase some of the best performance pieces of Penn and Teller themselves in this show. So please visit foolerslive.com to go check out their schedule. Find a performance near you. It's Midwest and East Coast primarily. Shows are September through October 2023, and you're absolutely going to love this show. If you've never seen an episode of Fool Us, it's a delight. It's like a talent judge show, but without the venom and with nothing but delight and magic. So it's a really great show. You should really check it out. Matt, like so many of us, he had a G.I. Joe presence in his life. Of course he did. He was a kid of the 80s, right? His favorite character, and then who can blame him, come on, was the man himself, Snake Eyes. So specifically today, we are discussing Snake Eyes version 2, which was where a brilliant concept rocketed to the stratosphere. Simple in its design, yet completely distinctive and absolutely unforgettable, Snake Eyes version 2 released in 1985 as part of the Series 4 line. Maintaining his primary all-black look, Hasbro added gray accents in the form of his belt and gear with a very subtle silver flourish on his wrist arrow. His visor was the most iconic piece of the look. It's one that still resonates to this day. Horizontal slats that mirrored 1980s post-punk MTV sunglasses. They seemed an impossible impediment to actually seeing, but they made Snake Eyes seem even more incredible. It's like he was so capable, he purposely would impede his vision to make it a fair fight. The next addition to his figure was his sword. Now, if you recall, version 1, Snake Eyes, had no mention of him being a ninja. He was a mysterious commando with martial arts training and the best at what he did. It was the comic books that added the ninja element to it. So when that comic book ninja element crossed back over into the toy, now all of a sudden you've got a depth to this character that just absolutely defines him for a generation. He's not only the greatest commando, we knew that, but now he's also a ninja. Forget it. Stop it. That's what I want in my life. And finally, after his debut in the cartoon, Timber arrived in 3 3/4 inch scale. In the comics and the cartoon, Timber was never really a pet, see. He was more of like a spirit animal for Snake Eyes. He was a representation of what Snake Eyes was underneath the surface. You know, he's a wild animal living among us that had the ability to go feral if pushed, but he was loyal to the end. Now, visually, his figure, talking Timber here, it was cast in light gray. It made a wonderful contrast to the darkness of the Snake Eyes figure. So when you put them together on your shelf, or just even literally on the store shelves, they popped big time. It's just a wonderful combination. He's such an iconic figure, Snake Eyes is, that he culturally imprinted on absolute every single 80s kid. Anyone who's ever seen him goes, oh yeah, that guy with the visor, he's awesome. Underneath that mask, he could be absolutely any of us. We were all Snake Eyes and he was all us. And it's certainly imprinted on our guest today, Matt Donnelly. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with the Mind Noodler. We're talking magic, we're talking Las Vegas, and we're talking the greatest action figure of all time. Yeah, so tell us, Matt Donnelly, Fuller's Live, this is the spin-off show from Penn & Teller's Fool Us, which you're the head writer on, right, for 9 seasons?
Yes, yeah. Every American season, I've been the writer on that show. We're about to shoot our 10th season. We have been sanctioned by the strikes to proceed with this season, so we're okay to talk about that.
That's important. My wife's Toilet listeners know, the Cobra cleaning woman. She's a member of SAG herself, so we respect that in this household.
Yeah. So, I mean, they took a look at putting together a show, and then Mike Mills Entertainment, along with two-time Fooler Vinny Grasso, kind of approached them to be like, do you guys want to put out like a tour? And less about Fool Us and more about Penn & Teller in terms of like their legendary status kind of deal is that like that they've invented so much stuff that they don't get to perform it all the time. And so we're performing some of their material.
Amazing.
And so, yeah. And just kind of a variety of people, right? So you have like Jessica Jane Peterson, who's like a real like a fire-eating kind of daredevil, really skilled magician. We got Alex Ramon, who is a big like illusionist. He has his own show in South Lake Tahoe, big box tricks, that kind of stuff.
Fun.
Vinny Grasso, who's a really charming and hilarious mentalist. And then I'm just the wild card. I'm the comedic weirdo.
Well, you're the Mind Noodler.
I'm the Mind Noodler.
Which is fabulous.
I do big, weird things that make people laugh. And
my
show's only gotten more ridiculous as I've gotten along here.
That's awesome. I love hearing the progression of it as you've described it. And you've been doing Mind Noodler for 6 years, I want to say?
Yeah, almost 6 years.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound like a lot of time. But I started performing comedy like on the weekends since I was like 15, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really taken a break from it. So I had a lot of stage experience, and I kind of learned magic on a dare. I was being an arrogant jerk. I was mouthing off to Penn from Penn & Teller saying, because basically as the head writer of Fool Us, I have to interview all the contestants because I have to help the host interview 60 magicians. And so I was getting frustrated just talking to full-time magician after full-time magician after full-time magician. They weren't famous, but they were just living their lives and living comfortably. And I was like, I basically was like, I should just learn magic, right? Like, it's so hard to make it in comedy. Why don't I just learn magic? And I kind of burst that to Penn, who skeptically said, it's probably harder than you think, but you might be better at it than you think. You should maybe start by learning, I don't know, one trick. So that was kind of a challenge. But then he kind of fell in love with that challenge. And so we spent that season. I always stop by Penn's dressing room between tapings and kind of chill out with him. And he just kept brainstorming different tricks that he thought I could try. He really got excited about the idea of me trying it. And then after the season was over, my dad came out to visit, and we brought him by. Penn has a podcast too called Penn Sunday School, and I co-host that podcast. He invited us over his house for lunch, and he started giving me advice on performing magic in general. Like if I was really going to do it and start now, he was being very practical about me starting late in life. And he gave me some advice, and I got in the car, and my dad said, "You just got basketball advice from Michael Jordan. You better take it." You know, I said, "Yeah." And I basically feels like I guess I'll just be embarrassed if I don't do it. You know, I have to do it.
That's awesome. That's an amazing one. And then you get to learn from Penn and Teller.
Well, that's it. So like after I started to work on it, I worked on it quietly and privately. I was going to do a trick just to show him. I used a magic trick, and then all of a sudden I was in the show in Las Vegas, and it was closing, and I was hired to be a comedy consultant on a brand new big show, and that was 5 months away. Mm-hmm. And I have 2 kids, two boys, and I wanted them to eat, and so I thought I need to
It's just the small staples, really. I mean, I don't know why you demand so much of your life as an American citizen, but
they
really,
take.
Yeah, I mean, you know, give a kid a breadcrumb, they'll expect a piece of toast.
So I was. I basically was like, oh, I got to get a good job. I can't get a bad job. And if I get a good job, I got to quit that job because I definitely want to work on this new show, Opium, at the Cosmopolitan. OPM, the letters OPM.
It's not just a show of smoke-filled theater, a bunch of actors laying about the room, muttering to themselves.
No, it's not. It's not just Edgar Allan Poe sitting on a couch.
One park bench in the middle.
A space themed variety show. And so I was like, you know what? Penn's willing to work with me on magic. I bet nobody wants to like take me on as like a project, right? Like no one wants to make me like an apprentice or something. A word that people think is more common than not in the world of magic. People don't regularly take on apprentices. I blame Mickey Mouse.
Well, that means you have to share secrets. And outside of Penn and Teller and very few other people, they're not really keen on that.
But I was spoiled because I worked on Fool Us, so everyone knew me as someone who worked with Penn and Teller. Everyone knew me as someone who worked on Fool Us, and so I had access to like a lot of great magicians. And so I thought, I bet they'll all be willing to teach me one trick. I bet I can find magicians who will work with me on one thing. You know, and so that's what I did. I went to all these magicians and said, "Will you teach me one trick?"
Oh, it's great.
So I went to Penn, I went to Teller, I went to their guru, who I started working with first, Johnny Thompson.
The great Johnny Thompson. Yeah. Rest in peace. Absolute legend.
Yes. One of the best. And if you have a chance to look up his stuff on YouTube, go for it.
He's
really such a talented magician. And look at the great Thompsonian Company specifically as one of the greatest comedy routines of all time. And Johnny was working with me, but Johnny worked with a lot of people. He was very generous with his time. So while it was helpful to me from a student perspective, it was not helpful to me from getting people on board. But then Penn said yes. Once Penn said yes, I went to Teller, being like, maybe they'll be competitive, and Teller will want to teach me something too. But once those guys said yes, then I asked Matt King. He said yes. I asked Piff. He said yes.
Yeah.
They're saying yes because they don't want to tell Penn and Teller. They said no.
That's great. It's great leverage. You're not wrong. Yeah.
Brian Brushwood, Eric Diddleman, and so all those guys combined to give me a show.
That's really great. You're like what was it, Huck Finn, asking everyone to paint one slat of the fence.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's really awesome. That's a really great origin story, and you've been doing it. And I've missed you every time you've been out here to the castle. Every time I hear that you're here, it's on a show. It's on an episode of Sunday School, and you're like, I was just at the castle last weekend, and I'm like, oh.
I know.
So I really want to see you. But you played it at the Magic Lounge in Chicago. I've been to that. That place is great.
That's a great place to perform.
That's run by a friend of my wife's from her when she was going through Second City back in those days. And his name's escaping me. But he's
Joey?
Yeah, that's it. Yes, absolutely.
Joey Cranford?
Yes, absolutely. Super generous. What a wonderful place. He's got a great collection of magic memorabilia too, like authentic stuff. It's really
place
awesome.
Is gorgeous.
Yes.
It's gorgeous. It's designed amazingly well. The theater feels gigantic yet intimate. Like playing for 100 and change, and it just feels like everyone's right there. It's so great.
It's super friendly, super, welcoming to people. Even if you just want to pop in, have a drink and watch the close up magic, work at the front bar, and you're not even actually going to the show. Like it's wonderful.
Yeah, I've had a blast there. Yeah, I've been very lucky. I tried hard to get into the castle, and once that was there, a lot of the other magic venues said yes to me, and then it's been going very well.
That's really great. That's really great. So, listeners, if you do want to catch up and see what the My Noodler's up to, go to mynoodler.com. That's noodler as in like fish and noodles, like you're noodling.
Yes.
Mindnoodler.com. You did just finish a little mini tour with that.
Yes.
But then this next tour, we're talking Foolers, that runs from September 14th through October 15th. So it's a hot 30 days. You're hitting a lot of places.
We're playing like
Midwest, East Coast kind of thing.
Yes, that's the first one. It's the first tour, and that's what we're doing. We're starting off. Yeah, we'll play the Midwest and then head to the Northeast. We're gonna announce more dates. So go over to Foolers Live and sign up for the email list, because we are gonna add. I know for a fact that we're probably gonna add about 10 more shows than what's already published.
That's awesome.
Up on there.
Yeah, go to Foolers Live and check it out. I don't know if you guys love magic as much as I do, but I freaking love it. I think it's great. I've seen Penn and Teller once in Vegas. I watch Fool Us whenever we're able to catch. Congratulations, you got Brooke Burke now as your new host. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. It's a real trip for me as someone who is a fan of Wild on E.
Yeah, who subscribed to Maxim back in the day. That's fantastic. And Allison Hannigan was a fabulous host. So best wishes.
She was.
Yeah.
She did 7 seasons.
7 seasons. Now, how did you get your start at head writer there? Did you know Penn and Teller before that, or did you start with that, or because you came from the improv world, right, out of New York?
I did. I came out of the improv world in New York, which we still did a lot of sketch writing and stuff like that. And I had worked with Penn and Teller before Fool Us. However, they were not necessarily interested in me as a writer, even though I'd written for them on another show. But I ran into the producers of the show at Penn's 60th birthday party, and they're just about to relaunch the American version of the show. And at that time, I was very lucky. I got hired by Lisa Lampanelli.
Oh, yeah, she's great. Yeah.
Yeah, so she hired me to do a round of punch-up on her last special that she did. And I got to work with her. And then I wrote this interactive show that took place in downtown Vegas called Alibi, where people would kind of follow an adventure where they'd have to go in like the back of a restaurant and get like a briefcase handcuffed to their wrist and figure out codes. And it was this kind of pseudo way to tour Fremont Street in the downtown Vegas scene.
Does it end with you kicking that guy in the nuts? Because I've seen that guy. I know you've talked. I've heard him talked about. I've also seen him live.
We couldn't afford him. He was too expensive. But we did have fake street performers and that kind of stuff, and it was kind of thing we didn't know who was real. That kind of.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, that's really cool.
And so that was going really well. And so when they checked in with me, the fact that I was doing other things, they were like, "Oh, you're doing things besides riding Penn and Teller's coattails," and I said, "I am." They didn't say those words, but that's what it felt like.
It also you've written in his voice so much. I feel like that's something that sounds like his voice.
Yes, and I do, and I do love writing for that voice. So they basically said, like, "I want you to submit a writing packet." And so that's how you get hired by real TV shows, is you submit a writer's packet.
Sure.
I did that, and then heard nothing. And then I called the producers to kind of check in to be like, "Hey, am I going to work?" And they were kind of like, "Oh, we like some of your stuff." And they said, and at the time, the first season was hosted by Jonathan Ross.
Okay.
Who came over from England. So I made a bunch of like England versus America jokes, and I think it was some kind of bad teeth dentist punchline. But Andrew's like, you can write an intro that says like, blah blah, and he quoted 2 jokes. And the 2 jokes he quoted, I thought he was quoting from other packets, and he sounded like he was quoting from other packets, and he said 2 jokes that were mine. And I kind of was like, is this some kind of weird head game?
Yeah. And
so I just froze and said like, oh, okay, I'll try to write more like that. And he goes, okay, man. Well, yeah, write some stuff up and let me know how it goes. And they got off the phone. And my phone rang like a minute later. And it was the executive producer of Fool Us. And Andrew said, hey, did I just tell you to write jokes like the jokes that you already wrote? I said, you did. And he goes, all right. I'll see you on Monday.
No!
I got the phone, and I got hired, and that was the way it went there.
That's
So,
a great story. That's a fabulous story. And
yeah,
the way you work yourself, the way you handle that is
yeah,
perfect.
yeah. I
It's
just froze, and it worked to
yeah.
my benefit. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Oh my
really was
gosh.
like, what do I do with that information? I was really lost. Thank God he
That's
called back.
that's that's really fantastic. Well, I do have I did send out a note to some listeners that you were going to be on, and one listener in particular wrote back, and this is going to roll. We're going to roll into GI Joe right now because
Great, let's do it.
this is Joe on Joe, and
Yeah.
Chris Angel has a question. You first got into Snake Eyes. We were talking V2. That was your Snake
Yes.
Eyes. You were telling me that was your jam when you were a kid.
Oh, he was all black, but he had like the visor that looked like it was kind of like those cool sunglasses in the 80s.
Yep.
The black and meant on his head. And he had that little wolf. Like
Timber.
Yeah, because in the cartoon, he was off in the snow with his wolf.
Yeah, snow and radiation. Deathly radiation.
Yes. Yeah. And so I just thought Snake Eyes was so cool. And also, like, born in 78 with two older brothers. So a child of the 80s, but then into stuff my brothers were into. Ninja culture was huge.
The biggest.
Huge.
The biggest.
Yeah. And my oldest brother was like a black belt, and then, there was like cartoons where like little kids went around and they would become ninjas and then
Sure.
fight and stuff like that. And the smoke bomb that would really work. It was a giant smoke thing that you could just become nothing behind and that kind of stuff. And so the whole and then I love the G.I. Joe cartoon. So the Snake Eyes was like the perfect blend of like this ninja culture because every small town in Jersey had some karate dojo or some, I grew up in Central Jersey, and
which is the most unrealistic part of the movie The Karate Kid. He left New Jersey to learn karate. Really,
no.
Could have learned it right there at that off ramp.
You really could have made like a left or right
Yes.
and learned karate, no problem,
completely.
Just one town over. So every town had a karate dojo, and so it was so much in the mix, and so Snake Eyes was like the ultimate blend of both of like the ninja like things of like martial arts plus the badass armed forces super soldier type of thing.
Yeah, I mean he had an Uzi. I mean an Uzi. Come on,
an Uzi
that never ran out of ammo.
Which is exactly.
It was always way too accurate than an Uzi should ever be.
Yeah, I mean the whole point of an Uzi is actually its lack of accuracy.
Yes.
It's just that it can be fired in smaller environments
right.
than a big gun.
But the man who can throw a Chinese star and hit someone 500 feet away, he carries an Uzi. He'll take care of it.
That's it, because we would play, because back then you could buy water guns that looked like guns.
Oh, yeah.
That was the big thing. They didn't even put the orange thing on yet.
No.
And there was an Uzi that you could buy, and you could buy a Snake Eyes Uzi water gun. And it was like, and it was just like it was great for urban warfare.
I had one.
You could walk right on the bus. No one knew you had a water pistol, and boom,
it was
battery? 2 AA batteries.
Yes, and it clicked.
Yes.
It went click, 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 click. Okay, we probably had the same exact Uzi toy because of Snake Eyes.
So my whole neighborhood, I grew up in a little neighborhood with like a cul-de-sac, and we were a bunch of baby boomer children, right? And so my older brothers, all everyone had kids that kind of all fit someone's age range or whatever. So we would play guns, giant.
Oh yeah.
And so we would all take our water pistols that looked like real guns, and we would take batteries and put them on like toy modeling clay and like stick them on the side of a house or the side of a garage. And if you walked by it, you yelled boom from 25 yards across the way. You'd look and see batteries, and you're out of the game.
You're playing C4.
Yeah, that's it. We were pretending to bomb each other and kill each other with guns. So we had water pistols and weird batteries and clay, and we would do big, versus battles of 10 kids versus 10 kids. And we were just reenacting G.I. Joe. It was awesome.
Great. That's amazing. And did you have the actual action figure?
Yes.
You did.
Okay.
So you said you used to play with your brothers. You guys used to blow them up. Did your brothers have a big collection when you came in? Because I'm just about 3 years younger than you, or older than you, rather.
Yeah. Well, that's it. So they had a better collection.
And
I was the quieter brother. So as they got older, right, and you're growing out of that toy phase.
Yeah.
If you took the rubber band, the thick black rubber band that kept the bodies together, if you stretched it, there's a cavern in the torso of each circle at the bottom of the torso. They would take a ladyfinger firework and put it in there and light it.
And then seal it up so it was full explode. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty good.
And so then they would blow So I watched my childhood get blown apart by firecrackers.
Well, that's the reason why they're climbing up in value these days.
Yeah,
'Cause so
exactly.
many people destroyed them as children.
And it was amazing. They were amazing figures too.
Oh, they were
But
great. Yeah, they were absolutely
yeah,
great.
yeah.
This show is always focused. I originally started focusing on the cartoon. We ran through all those episodes, and then we did the comic book. So the toys are kind of the last bastion, and it's not my area of expertise, but it's my area of passion and love. Like I love
Oh,
it.
sure.
There are people who know. So Snake Eyes. Did you know Snake Eyes has, I believe, at this point, over 100 different versions that have been made over the years?
Oh, I didn't. That sounds
Yeah,
high.
it's
But
crazy. As of 2018, it was over 70, and they've easily come out with 30 different versions in the last
how
6 years.
have there been failed attempts to make a cinematic Snake
Well,
Eyes?
did
I
you
feel
did
like
you
that's a
catch the
layup.
one last year?
No,
Oh
see,
yeah,
there you go.
yeah. No, see, no, you didn't miss out. We're just gonna leave it at that. We're just, in the interest of enjoying film and entertainment, it was okay. But we did a review here. And
Now with Barbie, it might be renewed.
Barbie was great though. But that's Mattel. Barbie was fabulous. I don't know if have you seen it yet?
Not yet, but,
Oh,
but my wife says it's one of her favorite movies. So I gotta go see
she's
it.
absolutely correct. It's absolutely lovely. And yeah, we hope that Snake. I mean, they teased it in the last Transformers. We want GI Joe to succeed on the big screen. They've had
Yeah.
3 attempts. The last one being Snake Eyes from 2 summers ago, I believe. And it was rough. It was rough. It was a difficult experience.
That's tough.
It is tough.
It's hard to get movies right. It's hard to get movies right.
It is, and there's so many cooks in the kitchen, and as podcasters, fans, whatever. You don't want to be negative, but at the end of the day, you go like, oh, there's just so many easy things you could hit that just they missed with Snake Eyes. So if you happen to see that, don't run out and be like, oh, I'm reigniting my passion for Snake Eyes. Let me watch this movie. I'm just telling you, don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
Okay. Deal. What you're telling me is that it's wide open for me to write my own Snake Eyes.
Well, that's
movie.
the thing. You've worked. I don't know why they don't go to you to write a Snake Eyes movie. You've worked with Teller.
Exactly.
You've worked with Teller. You know how to write non-speaking characters. Let's
Yeah.
do this. You know how to make it happen and entertain the masses.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the phone to ring.
Let's do that. You also work. I mean, you're everywhere. You also have a podcast, Ice Cream Social, with your
Yes.
co-host Paul Mattingly.
Yes, who maybe would be better at this than me, but
Oh,
that's okay.
is he a GI Joe guy?
Well, he's a big nerd guy. He's a toy collector.
Oh, great!
He's more of a Masters of the Universe guy.
Awesome.
Spawn, that kind of stuff.
Sure, sure.
But he's a former Klingon in the Star Trek experience.
Oh, okay.
We do what we call jock versus nerd trivia. I'm technically the jock. He is the nerd
Fun.
for it. So
And that show is it's because you come from an improv world. That show's kind of focused more on that world,
Yes.
right?
we're just two. Well, actually, three guys now. Our audio guy has become a fantastic comedic partner as well. So we the three of us joke around twice a week. We just
Amazing.
we joke around about whatever Vegas inside stuff, starting with that basically, or whatever weird stories from that week, and then we answer this in our mail, and we do a trivia at the end of each episode. We've got we just episode 1022.
Holy cow, that's great.
Yeah, so we're if you have a tedious job or a long commute, go ahead and check out Madly's Ice Cream Social. Have we got the catalog for you?
Check it out. That's a lot to catch up on. I mean, you guys do so well. You do scoopathons. The scoopabration,
Yes.
scoopathons? Is that what
Scoopabration.
Scoopabration.
Scoop Fest, the Scoopabration is the next one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
next
they all get their
year.
own nickname ones. But no, I mean that's things. We're Vegas, so we show off. So we bring people out to the Orleans Casino. We get a ballroom for 2.5 days. We do live podcasts. Penn will stop by often.
That sounds fun.
We bring in all of our friends to do acts. We have headliners. We put on shows. We do contests, all kinds of things. It's a real crazy event out in Vegas. It's a blast, and we're lucky to have just the most nicest, welcoming listeners in the world.
Yeah, that's that's absolutely the vibe I've gathered from that. And living in Vegas must be this sounds rubish. I've been there plenty of times, but it just must be different living there.
It is
because
different.
everything you're surrounded by is centered towards Vegas. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and that culture.
it's a
That's
city
the
that has-
industry.
That has its own character. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Orlando is probably similar. I think people talk about that like we're not a big city. We're we're a tourist destination surrounded by sprawling suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is kind of related to what's happening in there, and it is the hospitality industry. I think a cooler version of is basically I had a podcaster say that Vegas is actually like a small factory town. It just the factory is hospitality. It just makes hospitality.
Sure. That makes sense.
Just like we all loved when the WNBA Aces won the championship. We threw a huge parade. The whole town rallied around that kind of stuff. And I think that when you're rallying around properly,
yes,
when the whole town galvanizes for the WNBA, we are a small city.
Yeah, that says a lot. That says a lot. I get it. I hear what you're saying. That does say a lot. Yeah. I hail from Chicago. And having been at the Bulls parades back in the day, I hear what you're saying.
Man.
I hear those parades were crazy. I was in high school. That was wild.
That must have been wild.
Yeah, it really was. How are you enjoying the Raiders being there? I really want to come to watch football in Las Vegas. How is that experience?
The Raiders coming here has been pretty great. Mark Davis, I think, is really good at kind of endearing himself to the city and things like that. I think the good part for the Raiders is it was actually the Vegas Golden Knights, the hockey team that just won the Stanley Cup.
Congrats!
They did
for all the hard work you put in.
They did such a great job. I did such a great job. They did such a great job ingratiating themselves to the city and really becoming part of the fabric of the city out here. I think the Raiders just kind of followed the Knights' playbook.
That's cool.
And did all the things that they do. But it's been really neat. Because I moved here in 2008, where I remember signing a petition. Like, we want to build a professional sports stadium here, even though there's legalized gambling here and there'll never be pro sports. Yeah. Would you sign a petition that would simply say that you're interested in this pro sports team coming to Vegas? And I was like, sure, it'll never happen, you know, and signing away to it being now like this giant sports city. That
ban was just such the mark of hypocrisy of turning a blind eye to what was really happening. Of we can't have a sports teams here because there's gambling, even though everyone everywhere at that point has been doing online actual gambling and fantasy football and
Like there were certain casinos where like they owned like the Suns, so like you couldn't bet on a Suns game if you were in Vegas.
Right.
Little things like that. It was so strange.
It's so weird.
And there were some big scandals from back in the day, and I get that. And I just think, but it is like this kind of the internet has made things.
Tark the Shark, running Rebels.
He was I believe acquitted of everything.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Well, I take that back.
I believe the NCAA. He sued the NCAA and they paid him $2 million.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but no other betting scandals like, of course, Vegas, but it starts with whatever. But
sure.
Who cares? It's just that basically what I'm saying is that the internet has made it now so gigantic. It's so hard to fix things the way you used to try to fix things. And there's so much money on both sides of every equation that it's not the same advantage to have that go on.
Well, I'm excited to see it there. I'm also very excited to have you on today to talk about Snake Eyes Matt Donnelly.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because he's amazing. So I really appreciate that you brought some Snake Eyes love. Did your timber survive the
yes, he was never
firework bombings?
He was never captured by Cobra Commander and therefore sentenced to explosive death. No, he survived.
I always like to ask guests when they say that they have young children on there, is G.I. Joe either A, something that they would express, because it does exist now and it's mostly towards older fans, but is it something that you would ever share with your kids or introduce your kids to, show them the old cartoons, because they're all on YouTube, you can actually watch them totally for free. Hasbro puts them up and all that.
For a while my kids took a liking to Voltron.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah,
that's really
so
cool.
They have the Voltron figure, which I believe I bought from simply out of my own. Like, I could never afford the Voltron figure when I was a kid.
Yes,
so I totally bought the giant Voltron.
I always wanted same thing. I could never afford Voltron,
so I got them the full Voltron one Christmas because they watched 2 episodes. I was like, you're in.
Awesome.
But no, they watched a good deal of Voltron, a little bit of Masters of the Universe. They never got into G.I. Joe yet. But it's so hard to compete with Roblox and
that's the thing.
Minecraft.
It's an uphill battle. So we hope
if only G.I. Joe wanted to charge credits for everything that Snake Eyes wore on his thing, then the kids would be in.
Yeah. He is in Fortnite. If they play Fortnite, they're trying.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they're trying.
My youngest doesn't even understand that American currency is a thing. He just understands Roblox gift cards as currency. That's his only sense of money is that. So if GI Joe want to get on that train, I think they would have more success.
Well, as an ambassador, if you do run across GI Joe with your children in the future, please feel free to introduce them to it and
I will
spread the word. That's how it's going to survive and thrive and grow and all that stuff.
Yeah, I will.
Well, thank you for being on the show today, Matt. It's really a pleasure. And by the way, in reference to your most recent episode of Penn Sunday School, you're absolutely right. I do also have a friend named Matt Donnelly. So my Noodler is the right way to go from a Google search.
It's true. For anybody else, I was working with Teller, and Teller was like, "Why are you going by the minor there? Why don't you just go with my Matt Donnelly?" And I said, "Because there are so many.
Yes,
there are so many out there."
When I said to my wife, "Oh man, I'm getting Matt Donnelly on the show," she goes, "Oh, your friend Matt? We haven't seen him in forever." I'm like, "No, different."
Does he have nicknames?
It's not Sweet Matty D, which is how we can find you at Sweet Matty
right.
D on Twitter or X. Yeah. I will always call it Twitter. X is stupid.
It'll be Twitter.
Yeah, it'll always be Twitter. And before we go, I'm a massive Bruce Springsteen fan.
Oh,
and massive. And this could have been an entire episode about Springsteen.
That's true. You actually did your listeners a good service by waiting to the
huge service, because they would have tuned out immediately. Because I'm a massive Springsteen fan. So whenever you talk about him on the show, I'm all ears. I love everything about him. I celebrate his entire catalog of delights.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to do you the cheap work of saying what's your favorite Springsteen song. What's your best era? Like, what do you love? Like, what is it? What era of Bruce do you absolutely always go back to?
I tend to go back to. I actually liked his kind of return from the first albums that came out. Basically, he came back with The Rising, and so The Rising through like Magic and Wrecking Ball.
Yes,
I actually have been really. I find like if I'm just driving, if I'm just gonna just put on, I don't have to be in the mood for it. I just put it on. I will put on that era. I like that late kind of reunion era.
I totally agree.
I actually like those albums.
Yeah, those albums are amazing. I think they showed a maturity and an evolution that most artists kind of have trouble finding. You know.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like he really takes swings for different musicality all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Even recently, like I think it was so funny that like only recently I've liked Western Stars. Like it came on in like a mix that was playing on like an Amazon speaker, and all of a sudden the song came on there, and I was like, gosh! And I really just put on that, and I was like, I didn't enjoy it tremendously when it came out, and I liked a couple songs here and there that I played. Then all of a sudden, just the other day, and that album came out like I think 3 years ago,
something like that, yeah.
And also I was like, I'm finally like now ready for it to be that, you know,
yeah.
And I got into it. It's obviously so purposely cinematic and stuff. He just takes so many big swings. I think it's so impressive.
Yeah, and he wears so many cloaks. You know, he wears the character that he's singing about, and so that was his effort. And then recently with the 50s, not doo-wop per se, but you know the R&B, the R&B cover stuff.
R&B covers. I think if you read his book, you read his book?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, he's so clearly disappointed that Wrecking Ball wasn't huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he thought Wrecking Ball was going to be big, and that he's going to be back on top of the world with an awesome rock album. And when you listen to the album, I agree. I think it's a great album.
It is.
And so when that didn't happen, and they did the Broadway show where he revisited all of his old stuff, and that was like, well, he doesn't want to do more of that. He's just been doing that every night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it basically seems like he was like, well, I'm not going to be back on top of the world with a rock album anytime soon, and I'm all familiar with my old stuff. I'm just going to go some very different directions and put it out there. And I think it's been fascinating. And so it's been neat that I think he's just going to keep putting out albums. I think they're all going to be super different.
Yeah.
And I have to have a much more open heart and a much more open ear as I approach some of them. But yeah.
And I think we're rewarded if we do that too. And didn't they call Only the Strong Survive? Doesn't it have like a volume 1 or part 1 on it?
Well, this is fascinating. I hope there's more. I think there will be more. I think there's a couple of things to look at. I think if you look at like Rod Stewart had a whole second half of his career doing covers, but he was doing standards. But for Bruce to take on like these kind of cooler R&B hits that are a little lost in time, I think is really smart. And he had a whole album of those songs that he threw out.
Wow.
So the volume one, I wouldn't be surprised if this was volume one. There'd be more volumes because there's a whole bunch of volumes that he actually just decided one day, no, none of it, and started from scratch.
Oh,
and so this
so good.
is actually the album that came out is actually his second attempt at finding those songs that he wanted to cover.
Oh, it's amazing! I didn't know that. Did you? You must have caught him in New York on Broadway.
I didn't.
Oh.
I was living out here in Vegas, and my wife was trying to find a way to like maybe surprise me with it. And it was just so expensive.
It was. We were blessed. We looked into some last row tickets at a reasonable rate, and it was everything
I
you would
regret
think
it
would be.
And I'm trying to figure out now how to go see him. And look, this whole dynamic pricing thing, they just got it all figured out now, and it's so expensive to see anyone in
It
the
really
concert
is.
right
Yeah.
now. And I'm like, God, I'm a huge fan, and yet I don't want to spend, $2,000 or $3,000 to go see him. Because that's what it costs. Because he doesn't come to Vegas, so I have to pick whether I'm going to LA.
We traveled to Dallas because he wasn't playing LA, so we ended up getting again nosebleed seats, but then it was the cost of the trip and everything, So But
I'll figure it out. I gotta see him.
He's amazing. How many times do you think you've seen him over the years?
I think I've seen him 6 or 7 times live.
Awesome.
I cry. It's like religious.
And you cry at the weirdest songs.
Yes.
When we saw him on Broadway, both my buddy Matt, and also Matt, but not Donnelly, we both teared up at "Dancing in the Dark," of all songs. Like independently, we just kind of looked at each other, and there were tears rolling down our eyes, and it was like, "Why this?" I mean, this is
because the lyrics of that song are gut wrenching,
heartbreaking lyrics.
Heartbreaking.
Yes.
It is angst. It is angst before angst. It was popular.
Yes, and strip it of the 80s production.
Yes.
And you get just it's everything. I don't know why everyone's not a massive fan because it's awesome. My era is
clothes, my hair is my face, man. Yes. I ain't going nowhere.
My era is pre darkness all the way up through darkness. That's my favorite. That's my era I always go back to, especially the live stuff, because there's a rawness to it and there's him figuring it out. And that stuff brings me to tears all the time.
Darkness is beautiful. Like, I listen to it in context is beautiful because he was afraid the lawsuit that kept him out of the studios and recording albums, and he was afraid that punk and all the new rock had passed him by. And Darkness on the Edge of Town is his answer to punk and Seeger and John Cougar Mellencamp, and it's like this beautiful kind of like trying to keep up element to it, and yet the lyrics on it are just awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's it. Just actually, I was going to bring a G.I. Joe connection to this. Do you know who Clutch is? The G.I. Joe character, Clutch.
Oh, shoot, I forget now.
Modeled after Springsteen.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was the vamp driver, and his home in the file card was Asbury Park, New Jersey. They gave him like the beard stubble thing, and he was kind of like Larry Hama, who was making all that stuff. It was designed to kind of be a Springsteen reference, and like he listened to Springsteen on his file card and all that stuff. So
ironic, considering you read his book. He could not drive for the longest time.
Right,
Never
exactly.
got a driver's license.
Yeah,
so funny to make Clutch the driver.
Yeah. So that's and in the comic book there was a real effort from our perspective, a real effort to make him kind of the star of the book. And then the toy line, he just, he came with a vehicle. He didn't really take off. So then it shifts to being Hawk and all that stuff. But in the first 20 issues, Clutch gets really featured. So there's an alternate universe where a Springsteen-inspired character is the lead alongside Snake Eyes, running around shooting cameras. I just needed you to know that. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah. Matt Donnelly, my noodler, thank you so much for joining us this week on Joe on Joe, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a real pleasure. Listeners, absolutely check out the Foolers Tour. It's foolerslive.com. They've got dates coming up. If you're in the Midwest or on the East Coast, there's something within spitting distance. So please go check them out. And then check out the next season of Penn and Teller's Fool Us. Do you have an air date for that, or are you just starting to film now?
I don't. We're just starting to film now, but it will probably be out in late fall.
Wonderful. And you all know where to find that. And say hi to Matt Donnelly at Sweet Matty D on Twitter. Matt Donnelly, you're the best. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I loved it. Thank you.
Awesome. And now you, Joe. And Joeing is half the battle.